Hello and welcome, team. Welcome back. Coach's Corner here. I am Jeffrey David Hartford. And for those of you that are new here, COACH is an acronym, stands for the Conduit of Optimism, Altruism, Consciousness, and Health. And what I try to do is bring you a guest and some information each time that kind of covers each of those categories. And I believe today's guest, I've had the opportunity to know him for good stretch of time now. We've gotten to know each other a little bit better more recently, and I can safely say that he covers each of those topics and then some. So I'm really looking forward to bringing him to you today. Today's guest is the owner of Evolution Grappling Academy in Beacon, New York. He's a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt and was the 2017 FICW World Champion. He's also a self-proclaimed teacher, student, traveler, and lover. And with that last one in mind, that brings us to the fact that he is also now a husband and most recently father. With that, today's guest is Mike Palladino. Mike, welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to see you.
Likewise. Yeah, we unfortunately we don't get a chance to see each other as much as I would like. Hopefully we can remedy that at some point, but this is a great way to at least get in touch and get my audience here introduced to you.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do with the jiu-jitsu as the big talking point here, I do know you've got a pretty unique story, although maybe we won't call it so unique. You know, we all go through our unknowns as we grow up, right? And it seems many people end up going down that path of what they think is expected of them in the quote-unquote norm. And I know your story is a little different than that, and I actually really, really admire that about you. So if you would, tell us a little bit about that, the background that got you to your education and what brought you to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, great. So I found jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a Brazilian martial art. It was made big by the Gracie family. It's made popular by the Gracie family with the advent of the UFC. One of the Gracie brothers was the first owner of the UFC. And Royce Gracie won the first few UFCs, and it threw the martial arts world on its head. It was like everything up to that point had been, karate or taekwondo or kickboxing, and here's this 170-pound grappler beating up 250-pound muscle men. And so
Yeah.
I was introduced to jiu-jitsu through professional wrestling, my love as a child of professional wrestling. And growing up, I was introduced to pro wrestling through kids in the neighborhood, and then I wound up finding out that my father had been a huge fan of pro wrestling, and it was something that we could bond over. My dad worked a lot of hours, and he worked a night shift, and so he would travel to the Bronx. He just recently retired, actually. He would travel to the Bronx, it was about an hour and 15 minutes each way. He would drive, and he worked a night shift. So by the time that I got home from school, my dad had already left. And by the time I had woken up, he was sleeping, getting ready for his night shift. So I didn't get to see too much of him other than on his days off. However, he did his best to, the time that he did have to spend it with us. And oftentimes that meant going to pro wrestling matches. So that was kind of like a bond that we had. Additionally, my father was a grappler himself. He was a judo brown belt. And I remember being probably about maybe 7 or 8 years old, and he was cleaning out his closet for like a spring cleaning. And he had tossed his 2 judo gis, which are the judo uniforms, into the garbage. And I said, can I have those? And he said, sure, you can if you want to put them in your closet, do whatever you want with them. And for me, it was like a huge moment of I had idolized my father. My dad is my hero, and it was like Michael Jordan handing a kid a game-worn jersey. So I had those in my closet for years, and then ultimately, when I got to high school, pro wrestling also was kind of my segue into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and my introduction into Jiu-Jitsu, because The Ultimate Fighter, the first TV show for MMA, followed Monday Night Raw. And that first season, I was 15 years old, and I was like, I have to do this. And from there, it took a couple years because jiu-jitsu was not popular. Like now there's a jiu-jitsu gym, multiple jiu-jitsu gyms in every town. But, back in the early 2000s, you'd have to travel for some jiu-jitsu. So it took me 3 years before I was able to start formally training. In those 3 years, I would buy books and instructionals and watch videos, and me and my friends would mess around. But it was not formal instruction until I was 18 years old. high school. I was a high school senior when I started training jiu-jitsu. And after high school, I went right into the workforce. I didn't go to college. I went right into the workforce. I worked construction for quite a few years. Ultimately, I did not feel fulfilled in what I was doing for work. I couldn't find meaning or purpose in doing construction. I didn't really, I was just, it was Groundhog's Day all over again. I would wake up at 5 a.m. to an alarm clock, you know, shower, get ready, hop into a car, drive down to the city or a suburb of the city, um, be a laborer on a job site, and then start the drive home, sit in traffic, I just wasn't really digging how life was turning out for me, and I decided to really pursue jujitsu, and in 2012 I started the legwork of opening my own academy, and I started very very small, and now here I am, and I have 3 academies, and I get to do what I want with my life. I've traveled the world. I've been to Brazil. I've been to Russia. I've been to Japan. I've been to Europe, all in the name of jiu-jitsu. I've met my wife at my very first class. So jiu-jitsu has been really, really life-changing for me. And pursuing something that brought purpose and meaning into my life has completely, changed my life. I live a very fulfilling life. I go to work and I have purpose every day. Where I was kind of lost in the shuffle when I spent those 18 to 24, 18, I'm sorry, 18 to 22, 18 to 23, trying to figure out what I was going to do.
Oh man, that's amazing. So I was familiar with some of that, but you've got me sitting here speechless, just taking that all in. I actually recall saying this to a past guest too, but you just gave me this sense that I'm sitting here just as part of the audience listening to the show, and that was mind blowing. So talking about your dad, you gave me chills that, he gave you the gis, and that meant so much to you. I already had a vision as you were talking about that of you passing it on to your kid in the future. And, that passion that you have now, it'll be a little more intentional, you passing it on, than it
Yes,
was from dad to you.
absolutely.
But that's incredible. The other thing that you mentioned there that really caught me was talking about purpose. Now, is that something that at that young of an age you recognized that going to work and doing construction wasn't giving you this sense of purpose, and you consciously thought of that? Or is that something that's hit you afterwards with some of the reading that you've done and such?
That's a great question. I think that I can speak on behalf of myself, but perhaps there's other people that have this feeling. But I think when you're a kid, like you want to shoot for the stars. If you ask a 5-year-old what they want to be, I'm sorry, if you ask a fifth grader what they want to be, that probably it's going to be a professional athlete. It's going to be something big, right? And as you start to get older, you start to kind of like really reel it in and limit yourself to your capacities and the work that's required to meet your goal. And so I think that the feeling of pursuing jujitsu and living a life that I wanted to live, I believed in it and I believed that I could do it, but I was also greatly influenced by people around me that were like, kind of you're conditioned to think that you have to work, 40 to 60 hours a week and provide for your family. And I call it the social calendar. Like you have to check off the boxes on the social calendar. You have to have your career choice at this time. You have to be married by this time. You have to have kids at this point. And I think it's different for everybody. And for me, I knew that I wanted to do jujitsu, but it took me a little bit of, even at white belt, I loved teaching. I remember being in high school and I was asked what I wanted to do like post high school, and I wanted to be a teacher. And when I said it, I meant a teacher in the aspect of like a school teacher. And it's funny how life works out because I wound up becoming a teacher, but just in something that I'm way more passionate about. But I definitely knew that I wanted to do it. I knew that I wanted to do jujitsu, but a lot of people that cared about me didn't think it was a good career choice. It was, you should really get a more secure job, and I don't blame them for that perspective. But eventually, that kind of like I was able to sit down and realize that I was quite miserable doing what I was doing, and I didn't want to be miserable at 40. So I figured because I would be way more miserable if I was miserable at 21, 22 doing what I was doing. It was only going to get worse if I didn't make any changes. And instead of like, wasting time, I figured I would make the jump. And there's a Zen cone, and it's like leap and the net will appear. And so I took the leap, and it worked out for me.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And yet again, you say something that catches me. I knew, as I tell people, you and I are cut from the same cloth. We just have this energy that, we have a very similar purpose. But interestingly, I too wanted to be a teacher. That was the first thing that I was focusing on in college until I went to school in New Hampshire. I'm from New Hampshire originally. And the whole program was kind of warning us that, if you want to be a teacher, that's great, but just be prepared. If you're going to be a teacher in New Hampshire, good luck raising a family because you don't make a lot of money. And that was like a punch in my gut. I said, well, I know I'm a family man. I'm definitely going to want to raise a family and really go down that path. So it had me, take a few steps back and realize, all right, well, I guess teaching in a school isn't going to be for me then based on that. So what do? At that point, I switched over to phys ed with the mindset of becoming a trainer and getting into the fitness industry, which is interesting because, it's which is better, right? Which is more financially stable. I'm sure there's a debate to be had there, but it's just interesting how we both have that in common of wanting to be a teacher. And although we're not in a traditional class setting, we're still both teaching for sure.
Yes.
The interesting thing there then is where my mind goes. You started out with just a small school. You were renting some space somewhere with just a couple of students, and you've really, I know it's been 10 years now, but you've grown substantially. You're up to 3 schools now. When you started, did you have that business plan written up, or was it kind of just shooting from the hip and let's figure this out?
That's a great question. I would like to tell you that I had a business plan in place, but I would be lying. I certainly did not. I just was going off of pure love and passion from the get-go. And I'll tell you what happened. I think that just like jiu-jitsu, I mean, just like life, really, you get more wisdom from experience. Your failures are what you learn from. You have to fail. You got to be failing. It's like in jiu-jitsu. There's no way you're gonna progress if you're not losing, if you're not getting submitted, right? There's no one that makes it to the next belt that doesn't get submitted. And I think that could be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But same thing going back to the business. I didn't have anything in place. I just was going based off of love and passion. And I got myself in a pickle. I was introduced to some individuals who they didn't really have the best sort of how do I say this? They didn't really have what was best in mind for me. They had what was best in mind for them. And I remember, they had this grand illusion of what my business could look like if I put my business in their business. And my sister, who's also an entrepreneur, me and my sister are both entrepreneurs. She has a hair salon in Rye, New York, which is down in Westchester. And she said, Michael, I'm going to tell you, there's no such thing as a handshake deal. This is business. And I said, oh no, this guy seems like a nice guy. And I wound up getting burned, and they tried keeping. I had nothing on paper, and I had brought all my mats over there. I'd started teaching classes there, and they changed the locks on me. Basically, what it was this guy that I didn't know from a hole in the wall. He wanted my equipment, and when I called the police and everything, they were like, "Listen, this is a civil matter." So it wound up getting hashed out, and the point is I had to figure out what I was gonna do. Like, this is like, man, I'm maybe in business for 1 year at this point, a year and a half tops, and I run into this very critical issue where my business can fail right then, right now. And I remember leaving. I was going to compete at the Worlds, the World Championship. It was 2013, actually. And I remember going to the Worlds, and I realized, like, I'm on that 6-hour flight. It's out in California, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, this is what I want to do. Like, I have to work around this. And we get to the hotel, and I sit there, and the hotels, they have the little desk in the room. They got the Hilton pad. They have a pen and paper. And I just remember sitting there and starting to do all the math. I'm like, if I have, 80 students at $100 a month, I'm talking basics, right? I can make this much money a year, which means I can afford my own storefront, which means I can start. And that is when I wrote a business plan. So I wrote a business plan for myself a year and a half into owning a business, and almost failing. I left that facility. I had this 2 weeks of limbo where I was teaching classes at individuals' houses. I lost probably like man, half of my student body at that time. So let's say I had 25 students back then. I had gone down to like almost 10 students. It's an inconvenience for people. They're paying for business. They want good service. It's like they don't want
Hmm.
to do classes in somebody's basement. And it was a make or break time. And like I said, like there's going to be times where the deck stacked against you. You got to cut your losses. And so the long-winded answer of your question is I did not have a business plan in place. I was forced to create one through a tough time, and I'm glad that I did. It was never too late, so it worked out well.
Amen. I tell you, I'm actually glad you went through that too. While, as a friend, you don't want to hear your friend go through a difficult time, but the reality is that's what really helped make you who you are today and make your business as strong as it is. And I would argue that you getting started because of the love and because of the passion for it is the reason you stuck that out. Whereas somebody who gets into a business just because they've got this pretty business plan, they've got everything figured out, or so they think, and it's just about the money, something like that happens, they're walking away, right? So they wouldn't have the longevity you do. They wouldn't have the growth that you've had, and you had to work through that adversity. As Ryan Holiday's book says, the obstacle is the way.
Yes.
You saw that obstacle, you found and made a way through it because you knew in your heart that's what you had to do, and I think that's really admirable. So what I'd like to ask then, this is actually jumping ahead to a question I thought we'd get to a little bit later. Based on that information, I want this information to get out to an audience that is looking to do a similar thing, is looking for some growth. Maybe they're younger, they're in high school or college, and they're trying to go with their gut, go with their intuition, and go against the grain, go against the norm. Or maybe it's somebody who is 35, 40 or older who's finally recognizing that, man, I've banged my head against the wall for far too long now. I am miserable and I'm done being miserable. I want to make a change. So to those people that are listening, whatever their passion may be, what would you advise them to do? Where would you advise them to get started in whatever path and passion it may be for them?
I would say the advice that I would offer would be to make a plan. Try to figure out what exactly your goals are, where you want to be, and where you want to see yourself in 5 years. I'm a huge believer in like planning for 5 year intervals, if you will.
Yeah.
And when I first started my academy, I did what's called a vision map, and I still have this vision map to this day. Actually, it's in my Beacon Academy, and I got a poster board. I got a whole bunch of magazines, and I just cut out all these different pictures and these different words, and like I put a picture of a jiu-jitsu school that had like maybe 40 people on it, and at the time I had maybe 4 students. I put a picture of I took someone that had won the world championship, and they were holding their medal, and I cut their head off the picture and I put my head on there, right? Like I really, really believe in the vision, and you have to have a vision, and sometimes that vision requires, not sometimes, most of the time the vision requires having your goals, and having how you're going to get to your goals, having your short-term goals that are going to add up to get to your long-term goals, and having a visualization process like a poster board.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I could personally benefit from that myself. I've had my goals. I go a little shorter and then branch it out to a little longer. So I like to focus on a 30, 60, 90 day goal, and then out a little bit further, a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. But I love that concept of the board and really putting yourself and visualizing yourself at that level. That's absolutely brilliant. But it's interesting. It brings together two different things. If you follow any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, some people like this, it's a lot of that positivity, the mindset, the visualization and manifestation. And some people look at that type of stuff and call it kind of woo-woo, right? They don't believe that that's what it is. I think there's a balance of that type of stuff plus more of the stoicism in that you have to do the work, right? You can't just want it and visualize it and have this pretty board of it. You have to then go out and do the work as well to really create that. And I believe that's exactly what you've done. When Let me think here. I wanted to see a direction we were going in. You jumped me ahead to that other question because that's really what I was thinking of. Um, Here's a story. We're going to segue back a little bit. We were talking about family support and the direction they wanted you to go in. And I came across a story of yours that I really think this will show how all the hard work that you've put in because of your love, because of your purpose and your passion, and then seeing it all the way through. This story of your mom and her reaction at the belt ceremony that you put on, and maybe even a little more of a backstory from your words of how mom felt about you getting into this as a profession to how she reacted at that ceremony.
Yeah, so it was last year. I was having my belt promotions, and my mom came down to show support, and I think she got to see firsthand, one, how many people's lives I, have influence over on a daily basis, or I affect in some capacity or another on a daily basis. And, when I was first starting out doing this, my parents were, they were against it, and they weren't against it in the sense of, um, you know, just to be haters, if you will, but
Mm-hmm.
they were more scared. They didn't want to see their son get hurt and fail. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think any. I think I shouldn't say I don't think any. I think most parents don't want their kids to fail. I would say that's pretty fair, right? Depending on how you look at it. Sometimes it's good
Yes.
that people fail. Sometimes it's
Yes.
very good for people to fail. Oftentimes it is. And so I think they were worried about that. And I think that they thought I was in a phase. My mom always said this. She feels regret for being doubtful of me, and she said to me years ago. She said you always like were on to something else. You were always like you're going to be a skateboarder, you're going to be a baseball player, you're going to be a hockey player, like you're going to be a mechanic. She's like you were always going through these fads of things that you were going to do, and I thought jiu-jitsu was just going to be another one of those. And then she said jiu-jitsu's kind of been like your Rubik's cube, like you are fixated on this and you keep paying attention to it and you keep focusing on it, you keep problem solving like it's the first thing that you didn't throw away. And I think that's probably pretty accurate. I probably did go through a lot of different fads. And with that said, my mom, she wanted to show support, and I was probably had the gym for about a year and a half at this point, and she came to a tournament to show support, and a gentleman who was like 60 years old went up to her and was like, your son has changed my life. He's such a motivator. He's so great with everybody. He really pays attention. He's like, I've been to all these different schools, and your son is the first person to treat me just like I'm a world champion instead of a 60-year-old guy. And he's had such an impact on me, such a positive impact on me. And my mom got kind of choking up. And I think that was the first time where she was like, I'm so sorry that I ever doubted you. I never realized how much influence you have over people. And that was about, 10 years ago. And then last year, at the belt promotion ceremony, there's, hundreds of people on the mats, and, I'm in the center of the room standing up and talking and promoting people. And all their family is there, the wives and the siblings and the family members, the moms. And, you know, when everyone had started to part ways and we were closing down, my mom was crying, and she was crying tears of joy, and she said that I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm so glad that you turned out. I'm so proud to be your mother, and I'm so glad that you didn't listen to anybody, and you made your own path. And it was a really powerful moment for me because you know sometimes the simple words "I'm proud of you" can change somebody's life. I have an individual that I'm related to, and he grew up without a father, and he his mom works crazy hours. She's an RN, and he's been in my life since he was five. I've been in his life since he's 5 years old, and he's 18 now. And he started training with me. He's in the military, and he started training with me when he was 16. And one day he was sitting on the mats, and I went over to him, and I said, "I want you to know how proud I am of you and the young man that you've turned out to be." And he started crying. He started bawling, crying, and I'm getting shaken up telling the story right now, actually, um, because you don't realize some people have never been told that someone is proud of them. And when he was crying, I was like, man, like it's okay, like. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. And he said that no one ever told me that they were proud of me before. And he's such a good person. He's such a good kid. And so, it was, it shook me up a little bit to see someone's reaction to that. And that's what made me realize that if you're like in a position of a mentor, if you're in a position where people kind of look up to you or admire you in any capacity, your words hold weight. And so many people don't recognize the influence that they have on others, and they misuse their influence, and they'll put other people down, and they don't really take that role with a whole lot of responsibility and pride. And I take pride in the role that I'm in, and I try to let people know, I try to acknowledge people's hard work, and I try to acknowledge the fact that, people hold me to a high standards, so my words hold weight over them. And like I said, just saying something like you're proud of someone and genuinely meaning it can make somebody's, life change. So yeah.
Wow, that's deep, man. Yeah, that you hit me with that one as well. And it's interesting, you say it, you have to mean it, right? So, and I know from you that came from the right place, and that's why it hit so hard and it landed so hard. I think it's really important that people recognize that you don't just throw things around like that flippantly. Somebody earns that, right? You're proud of him for what he's done. You share that with him because it was appropriate at that time, and it was a moment for the two of you. And it's really interesting. You mentioned that some people don't recognize that, and or maybe they do and they use it incorrectly, right? And what that makes me think of is just how powerful and how, in many cases, most cases, harmful the ego can be. There's something about jiu-jitsu, and I see this resonate with you, something fierce, that you just don't have an ego. One of the most humble people I know, and that's one of the values I've seen in most people that practice jiu-jitsu, and it's beyond admirable. And it's interesting. It had me thinking the other day that this dichotomy, if you will. I have a background in bodybuilding. It's the complete antithesis, not across the board. I'm certain there are some people that get in competing bodybuilding and, they're humble people and they're great people. But generally speaking, and most of the people I've had this conversation with that have also experienced bodybuilding can relate with me, what fueled me was insecurity, was my ego. And I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but in hindsight, that's what I recognized. It was putting myself through something to be able to get those compliments and get that feedback. And that type of mindset, somebody who's fueled by insecurity and fueled by ego isn't going to be able to take themselves into a school like yours and recognize that every lesson they learn is going to be essentially through failure, through tapping out. And there's no shame in tapping out. It's taken a lot of work for me personally to get past all that stuff, but I think it's important that I share that story because I don't think everybody I know recognizes that about me. So with me sharing that, now I'll ask you, you started really young in jiu-jitsu and you started your school at a young age. Do you recall back to a time that you dealt with those insecurities and that ego, or do you think that's just something that you were able to transcend pretty early on?
No, I definitely think that I had an ego, and I think that in some degree, the ego's there. You have to acknowledge it, and so you got your shadow side, your dark side of your ego, and then you have like your positive side, and you have to acknowledge both because they're both existent.
Yeah.
And I think that for me personally, I walked around through my youth like a tough guy, and I I was the guy that everyone said could fight, but that was just because of stories. No one had actually ever seen me fight, or not that many people had seen me fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kind of have this like armor that is not real. It might sound real and look real, but it's not. And doing jujitsu, and I had this reputation about me, if you will, and that was a lot of it was just insecurity. You know what I mean? And when I started training jujitsu at 18, certainly that's the other aspect of it too. And I'll try to connect my points here. Is that there's levels to jujitsu. There's belt ranks, and obviously it's a spectrum from beginner to seasoned veteran, and there's different levels of the ego. Like A white belt is almost always all ego, and again, I'm generally speaking, and a blue belt too, right? A blue belt is someone that's been training for anywhere from 12 to 24 months or 12 to 36 months, and they're still like they're above white belt, but they're still below purple, brown, and black,
Hmm.
so there's still this ego involved, and it's like if a blue belt catches an upper belt, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to hear about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the ego's still there. But as far as I'm concerned, I definitely, kind of similar to you, like, I think pre jujitsu, a lot of individuals kind of correlated strength and toughness and badassery with the way you looked.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I look muscular and if I have a six pack and I'm shredded, people are going to leave me alone, or people are going to admire me, and people are going to give me compliments, and that's going to keep me safe from actually being tested. You know what I mean? And the same thing with jujitsu in a sense. Um, I think I definitely had an ego when I got started. But I'll tell you what, it's a very humbling sport. It's a very humbling art. So the guys who still have an ego in jujitsu typically don't last very long.
Hmm.
They get weeded out fairly quickly because you have to go with it. You sometimes you just got to go with the flow, and you're going to be submitted. And if you react with the ego, your brain's going to take over, your mind's going to take over and be like, yeah, but I could have punched him in the you start to come up with all these things that you could have did. It's like, yeah, I could have did that to you too. You know what I mean? So it's like it cancels out. So you do, like, there's definitely ego involved, and I definitely had an ego, and the mats undoubtedly made me more humble. And yeah, of course, I still compete, so I still want to win, and I have to believe that I'm capable of winning, and I have to believe that I can perform better than my opponents, and so I do think the ego is in there, but I don't think I'll say narcissistic aspects of the ego.
Yeah.
Even that might not be the right word, but I don't think that I can relate with you in that sense of wanting the compliments and wanting that. And I think when I was younger, I definitely experienced that. And as I started to get more experience and even life experience and dealing with people, it's like you start to realize how to navigate issues. It's like I don't like a person. I'm not a big fan of like texting. And if you if you have an argument with someone on social media over whatever culture, war, or politics, it's like, man, if we sat down and had a drink together or went out to a restaurant, you would not disrespect me, and it's like, not because I would beat you up, but you would have to answer for
Yeah.
something. And the same thing, I wouldn't disrespect you because we're face to face, and there's repercussions for talking like how some of these people talk on the internet.
Sure.
And so I know that was a long-winded answer, so my
No, I
apologies,
love
but
it.
I definitely think it was inherent in the beginning of me doing jujitsu.
Yeah, no, I love it. Don't ever apologize for going on too long. I like what you have to offer, and I'll call myself out. We've got a lot of mutual friends that go to your school, and I've expressed interest for a while. I'd love to actually get my kids over there as well, but I know I personally could still really benefit from that. It's kind of that concept, in this is going a slightly different direction, but same concept, if you will. That idea of it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in war, right? Being prepared, knowing how to handle yourself, just gives you this sense of confidence, and it really does get you past that insecurity in that aspect of the ego there. And I'm going to put myself out there and say that I'll be getting my butt over to your gym a little bit to get some of that experience, get a little humble pie, and have to tap out. Um, so here's another thing that comes to mind is I really admire this aspect of you and what that skill set does for you. Not that you ever go out looking for problems, but I know in Beacon there have been some incidences that you've stumbled upon where you've essentially given somebody an opportunity to make a better decision and they didn't, and you've had to handle it. If you want to tell us some of those stories.
Jiu-jitsu definitely makes you physically capable with confrontation. No doubt about it, or at least it has the ability to do so. A specific story from Beacon was we had gone out to eat after a training session, and there's a gentleman where we live, the city of Beacon, and he's a couple years younger than me. He's a fairly big gentleman. He's maybe like 6'2", 250, 260. and he's a troublemaker. He's like a he's lost. He's a lost soul. He's always drunk in public. And we had gone there after a Saturday class. We had gone out to lunch, a couple of my students and myself. And as we were paying, we started to see a like altercation break out. And one of the individuals in the altercation, it was just verbal at this point. One of the individuals in the altercation was someone that I went to high school with that is nerdy, if you will. That's the best way to
Mm-hmm.
put it. He's a quiet, very introverted individual. He works as a cook in one of the restaurants in Beacon that I frequent. So I would see him. And it's like I went to high school with him. And, after all the times he sees me, he's just so socially introverted. I'm like, hey, how you doing, brother? And it's like, hi. It's like it's just a person that's quiet and introverted. And there's nothing wrong
Yep.
with that. And this obnoxious individual was just like, messing with him. And so I ran outside, and the gentleman who I went to high school with was like, I'm sick and tired of you harassing me every day, and he had just hit his breaking
Yeah.
point, right? And so the more physically imposing individual, and bullies typically will pick on people that they can, impose their physical attributes on. And so I got in between them. I put my hands up in between them, and the gentleman who was being aggressive. He's bigger than me. He didn't even consider me as a threat. He just had tunnel vision. So I told the gentleman I went to high school with, I was like, man, keep walking away. Don't worry about it. He's not going to follow you. Keep walking away. And so he turned his back, and the gentleman, the aggressor, went to go forward. And so I dropped down. I single legged the individual, which single leg takedown. I put him down on the concrete on the sidewalk. I grabbed his hands. I pinned him to his chest, and I went to a position called neon belly. And he was talking smack from the bottom, and he's like, "Get off of me, or you're gonna make me madder." And I said, "I will get off of you when you are calmed down." And he goes, "Okay, I'm calm." And I let him up. And at any point, I could have hit him. I could have put him in a submission hold, but instead, I just
Yep.
subdued him. And part of that comes with the experience that I had. If I was maybe 10 years younger, I might have made a boneheaded decision and hit this
Sure.
guy. For what point? I had no reason to. I just controlled him. Totally subdued him. There was nothing he could do. Um, and that's one time where I've had to use jujitsu in public, and yeah, I was a very good call.
Yeah, amen. I love everything about that story because I think it goes to your character, but also the whole concept of what jujitsu is that you're not doing it to harm somebody else. I mean, you can if you want to, if you want to use it for the wrong reasons, right?
Sure.
Or not even necessarily the wrong reasons. If it got to that point and it was necessary, you could. But I think that's the best thing that possibly could have happened in that circumstance. I guess the next best thing, and I'll pray for his soul. I know you said he's a lost soul. How nice would it be if he could kind of come to and have his awakening moment and recognize, wow, maybe I could use some help and get to EGA and come get some training and really make that go full circle. Maybe not likely, but we'll pray that that can happen. That would be
Yeah.
a beautiful way for that
Yeah.
to end.
Absolutely.
Now, this is a little bit of a segue, but I did want to get to this before we wrap up because I know, again, this is with some of the friends that we have in common. You utilize a lot of alternative approaches with your training and such, things like ice baths, meditation, sauna, and so on. Curious if I'm missing a couple of there that you also do. If you could give us a list of the things that you do, what got you into them, and how you think they help you both from your jujitsu end of things, but also just life. How does it help you become a better man?
Sure. So I definitely like to do the ice baths. I'm a big fan. I have a horse trough. Been doing the ice baths for probably like I think 2015 or 2016. I think 2015. We bought a horse trough, me and a couple of my students, and we had no idea what we were doing. We were just like, let's freeze our butts off, And also definitely like the sauna. I really really much enjoy the sauna, and then on top of that, I've done the sensory deprivation
Yeah.
chambers a few times, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed certain aspects of that, but I think that ultimately my favorite part about the ice bath and the saunas and even the sensory deprivation it's all about your mind and the power of your mind. And yes, you're recovering, but being in 34-degree running water in a creek somewhere in the middle of December when there's snow on the ground, you really have to control your breath. Like breath work is so
Hmm.
important. The ability, like a lot of people don't know how to breathe properly. So the ability to control your breath and the ability to really hone in and focus on your breath over the voices in your head that say, "Get out! You're gonna die! You're freezing! You're
Yep.
freezing! Get out!" And I've seen a ton of people, like just totally wig out as soon as their toe touches cold
Sure.
water. And so I definitely enjoy the physical benefits of that type of recovery, but I very much, very, very much really prefer the mental aspects of it and conquering that inner
That's
bitch.
right. Absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up too. The degree to which you went with the cold there. My last guest was the guy that ran the Wim Hof method workshop that I went to. His name's Michael Cristoforo. Yeah,
Oh,
it
get
was
out!
incredible. You'll definitely appreciate that.
I had really wanted to go to
We
that.
will.
Yes.
I say we do another. In fact, Michael has a place up north, and he hosts retreats there too. We could easily put a team together and head up and go do our own, and get up there and check it out. So that'll be a fun
I would.
experience.
I'm all
Awesome.
about
Yeah,
it.
I really look forward to that. So I tell you what, I feel like I know your schedule is limited for today, and I think we've absolutely blessed the audience with some wonderful tools from you. And I do have one more question that we can leave them with, but before we get there, I will say
Sure.
for those of you listening, if you like the content so far, definitely stick around, subscribe, follow, depending on which platform you're watching on. Leave a 5-star review, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. All those things I have to get out, or else I get yelled at by my producer. Um, and the last question, actually, second to last, I'll have one more after this too for you, Mike. Um,
Sure.
for
Yeah.
people walking away today, some practical applications that they can use. Is there something from a jiu-jitsu standpoint people can start on their own, or do you think it's something that they really would need to get into a facility and find a coach?
Yeah, you definitely have to go into a facility and find a
Okay.
coach. Can't really do it on your own. I think that doing it on your own could be dangerous, personally speaking, and you're not going to get the level of knowledge and attention to detail that you would under a highly
No, that
trained
makes total
coach.
sense.
And it could be anywhere, like wherever the listeners are tuning in from. There is no doubt a gym in their capacity or their kind of like a location where they're at within a short distance away. There's jiu-jitsu has really blown up, and definitely would recommend getting a coach. I was 15 messing around with my friends in the basement, and I still had to spend a tremendous amount of time at white belt fixing all the things that I thought I was
That's
doing
a
right.
great point too, especially if we want to get to a point that we build up the ranks. Making sure you learn how to do it the right way. Don't create bad habits and just get in there and do it the right way. Now, I know for quite a few of you, yourself included, for sure, reaching the level of world champion, competing with it is really important. But I know for many people, they don't necessarily want to compete. They just want to learn how to do it. They want to do it for some conditioning, some training, and maybe even from a self defense standpoint. For the people that don't necessarily want to compete, this is just my ignorance to it, the different schools out there, do some schools focus more predominantly on the people who are competing, or is it every school out there capable of both helping you compete and just helping to teach you the skill sets?
I think that it's probably gonna depend
Mm-hmm.
on where you go. I can't really speak to you know other schools and kind of their oversight on their student body. I know that there's some schools that like try to push everybody to compete. There's some schools that it's like if you want to compete, you're welcome to compete. If you don't want to compete, you're welcome to not compete. So it really depends where you go, and finding an environment that is kind of conducive to your needs is important. I personally think that competition is good for you. I think that there are many things that you can tackle, and whether it's insecurities or issues like, it's very like anxious to go and compete, get butterflies in your stomach. You start to similar about like what I was saying with the ice baths, these thoughts that pop up and want to take you over, and the mind wants to win, the bad
Right.
side of it, and but yeah, it depends where you go. Definitely, some schools may be fixated on just competitors, but I would say that a good portion, probably 90% of schools of jujitsu, it's a very it's a very great environment, and I hope people, if they do choose to go, they find a place that has a great environment, because I've watched jiu-jitsu change so many lives, and one of the most rewarding and fulfilling things, for me as a coach, is seeing people's journey, seeing someone walk in who doesn't know anybody. And I think it takes a lot of bravery and courage to step into a facility that you don't know anybody at, and to walk in the door is a really big win. And for me to see individuals come in for the first time and go through the process of complete novice, they walk in. Sometimes I have people who are athletic, they've maybe played sports before, and sometimes I have people that have literally never done a physical activity. They have no sort of intelligence or kinesthetic intelligence, and no
Hmm.
flow with their body. But regardless of that, the rewarding feeling and fulfilling feeling for me is to watch the progress of an individual go from total novice to a seasoned veteran. And I think that the environment of jujitsu, like, is typically filled with individuals who are oftentimes in a similar position as you, or at least started in a similar position as you. And it's really like a tribe. There's people there that want to help you get better, and I don't have to tell them to help you. There's just individuals that want to help, and they want to kind of give back and pay it forward. How they were treated, and the other individuals who took them under their wing. And yeah, jiu-jitsu is an incredible martial art. And from the outside looking through, you have your preconceived notions of perhaps a jiu-jitsu gym, but it's not until you get in there and get to experience like an incredible culture and some incredible people that you realize how beneficial this martial art is. And
Yeah, that's
yeah.
fantastic. So one last one then on that is, for somebody who does want to get started, is there something they can look for? I mean, I think it's safe to say most people I personally know that have done jujitsu, it's exactly what you just described there, but it's inevitable that some people might want to just take advantage of the reputation jujitsu has and open their own school just to capitalize and make money. Is there a credential, a certain place that somebody should be, trained through, that a novice can know, okay, this is a place I want to be. This is a place I'm really going to learn the right stuff.
Yeah, the beautiful side of the internet is the ability to look at reviews of gyms and to see what other people have to say. Um, there's not like a governing body, if you will, over who can open a gym.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can open a gym, but reputation is very big in jiu-jitsu, and it's very hard to fake being a black belt. And ironically, probably my most viral video on the internet has got like 7 or 8 million views, is me kind of outing a fake black, not kind of, actually outing a fake black belt. And so yeah, the internet is the best way to see if someone is
Yep.
legit or not. And people that try to open a gym with zero legitimacy, they will be
Yep.
made.
That's I actually forgot, but I've seen that video and it was brilliant. So well done. So absolutely, no,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Truly, that was entertaining. I'll see if we can link it in the show notes for people to see. And that being said, so we'll wrap it up here. Where can people find you? I know we'll definitely put the link to your website in the show notes as well. But where can they find you? And do you have any presence online that they can follow you?
Yeah, sure. So my personal Instagram is Mike Palladino BJJ. My business Instagram is Evo BJJ. My website is evolution-bjj.com. If you're interested in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or mixed martial arts or boxing or Muay Thai, you can find out our schedule there and
Great.
contact us from there.
Great. Mike, thanks so much for coming on today. I'm certain our audience is going to walk away with plenty that they can put to use right away. And hopefully, anyone that's local will be getting in touch with you really, really soon.
Thanks so much, Jeff. It was an honor to be on your podcast. I was really happy we were able to link up and get
Likewise.
this done.
Amen, my brother. And audience, thanks so much for sticking around. And if you liked this, be sure to stick around because we'll bring plenty more to you. And I anticipate, this was a pretty short one, I anticipate we'll have Mike back on in the future as well. So have a blessed day, everybody. Be well.
Absolutely.